at Lilydale Flying School, about to embark on my first flight lesson. I've done a trial flight, now I've locked in to get my licence. So as we can see, it's a plane, which is a good start. I'll just show you what it looks like on the inside. So we've got a 2 seat cockpit here with our flying instruments and our computer, and that little back bit is a bit of a luggage space.
We can take a bit of video when we're in the air if you like too.
That'd be wonderful. This is Frank, the instructor. Say hello, Frank.
Hello.
There we go.
My name is Frank, the instructor.
He's the instructor. Right, so as we walk around, we're going to do our safety check first. So we're going to go through that in a moment, but just to get a good look at what the plane looks like here, just do a walk around. And that's it. Cool, let's continue.
And then we're going to, now with the pre-flight inspection, the main priority is we want to make sure the plane is fit to fly. Now, when we get in the aircraft, we're going to look at the paperwork and make sure it's not due for service or anything. But first of all, we're going to have a look at the prop. So, now with these type of engines, we need to pull the engine through to pump oil out of the bottom of the crankcase back into the oil tanks, because it has what's called a dry sump system. Now, when I opened the door, I also checked that the ignition was off and that the magnetos were switched off, because we don't want the thing to start while I'm doing this. So we're going to pull it through 8 times, and at the same time we're going to have a look at the prop. Now in a place like this, you have to look at the prop, because in an airstrip that had a lot of gravel or stuff on it, that could get sucked into the prop, could get damaged. Here it's more like to just whack a stick or something.
Okay.
So we're going to go over this.
So if it's got chips in it, is that an issue?
Yes, it is. If there's chips on it, there's issues for sure. So,
and what would a chip cause?
Well, a chip, basically what we're looking for is fracture lines.
I see.
If there's dings in it or there's fracture lines, if there's fatigue, signs of fatigue, we want to make sure the spinner's going to stay on, there's no loose screws. Yep. As these things are rotating, at full power, these prop tips are at about kind of Mach 8.5, so they're really hammering. And so if they hit anything with that kind of energy, it's much less a person. It's going to have quite a bit of impact.
Is there a reason why we spin it 8 times?
That's why.
8 rotations?
Basically, essentially, it could be 8, could be 10, could be 5. Another trick is to just turn the engine over with the magnetos. It's essentially what we're doing is we're pumping oil out of the sump. Because it's a dry sump, so we want it back in the oil tank. So that, the whole bottom of the engine isn't filled up with oil. So anyway, that's fine. We've done that. Walk around now. I'm looking for dings on the surface of the aircraft, and anything's whacked into it. So we're going to have a look at the landing gear, make sure there's no cracks. Have a look underneath, nothing's bent underneath it. I'm also looking at the brakes, making sure there's no, you'll see the brakes around the other side there. Yeah. Make sure there's no leaks. Making sure there's no cracks in the tire's inflated correctly. Make sure that this nut is in along with this split pin. We don't want the wheel to come off.
No.
Now this is the pitot tube.
Is that altitude, is that right?
Yeah, that's airspeed. And that's this one is called the static port. Now the static port on some other aircraft are on the side or the tail, and this one happens to be next to the pitot tube. This is going to tell us our airspeed, and this is basically what's called the static vent. So this is telling us the dynamic pressure, that's telling us the static pressure. We go more into that later on.
Yep.
Make sure that's on solid. Come around here. It's all good.
And why do we shake that?
I give it a shake because I'm looking for anything loose, anything clicking. Now, another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have a look, you can stay there if you like, and have a look at the ailerons. These are called flaperons.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is have a look at them, make sure that they're... I'm having a good look underneath the wing, also making sure that nothing's been thrown up because it's fabric underneath. So I want to make sure that the fabric is in good nick.
Yep.
Make sure that the ailerons are working properly.
It's smooth action as
Yep.
well.
Now what I can do is put the flaps down now. And now I'm going to operate them as flaps and check both of them. Have a look at their condition. Put the flaps back up. So, on some aircraft you'll just grab these and wiggle them, but because these have got the flap, the fabric covering, we avoid doing that. I mean, you can do this, but it does.
It's easier to use.
It's not a good look.
No, sure.
Yeah.
Can the fabric here, can that be pierced?
It can be pierced. It's actually pretty strong. I'll just do it in a sec.
Okay, just double check, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you have equipment with you?
Sorry?
Do you have equipment with you?
Do you?
Yeah, just double check. Maybe they
First flight of the day, and every time we fill the aircraft up. Now for that, different aircraft have fuel test points at different parts of the aircraft. This has probably the most inconvenient arrangement where I've got to get underneath it, and there's a fuel tap underneath the aircraft. I'm going to put a little bit of fuel in here and we're going to check it for water. So turn that on and off. And what we're looking for, put it next to my skin, I want to see a slight blue colour.
Oh yeah.
And I want to see no bubbles, no water in it.
Okay.
You see? I just emptied this over.
First job is to dip and check the fuel. So this is where the fuel goes, on top of the wing. So we've got two, one over that side and one on this side. And we're going to dip it in just to see how much fuel we've got. And you can see there from the wet spot we've got about 28 litres on one side, and now we'll check the other side. And we dip on the second side, and we've got about 20 litres on this side. So that's 48 litres across the tanks. I hope that's enough. Okay, so we've done our safety checks on the plane. We've checked the fuel, we've checked the oil, we've gone around and we've checked everything else. Now it's time to do the paperwork before we head off. Quick little weather check. It's a bit cloudy. We've got some wind, so the first thing we look at is wind. So we've got a windsock over here, which tells us exactly the direction the wind's going. Quite interesting, we've got another windsock on this side here, which is just below the trees. So this one over here isn't doing anything. So it's not getting any wind because the trees are blocking it. So the wind's blowing from a westerly direction. This one is sort of moving. So as we take off and we get above that tree line, we're going to get a bit of turbulence because the wind, we go from no wind into wind. And then as we climb up, there'll be a little bit less wind. So it'll be a little bit rocky to start with. And in these lighter planes, you tend to feel a lot of the turbulence because there's a lot of, you probably can hear that, that's the wind coming through now. There's a lot of bumps going through.